Clementine had finished her reading homework that she was assigned by her mother. She was curious why Sarah was upset when she walked in. She wondered if she got caught last night. This would make sense since wasn't in bed when Clementine woke her up. Her curiosity got the better of her and made her way to the makeshift desk that Luke had made and went in to find Sarah and her mother. It wasn't long until she found the two. She noticed that Sarah seemed to be crying and her cheeks were red and her eyes were puffy. "Thanks," Sarah said. "Are you okay now?" Rebecca asked. "Yeah, I just feel so conflicted," Sarah said. "That's normal, sweetie. It's just part of growing up," Rebecca said. "What's going on?" Clementine asked. Rebecca looked over at her daughter and a surprised look. "Clem, I thought you had reading homework to do." "I got it done," Clementine said with a shrug. "Dang it, I forgot you became a speed reader," Rebecca said. She sighed and then said, "All right." Sarah was caught sleeping with Zeke and Carlos flipped out on them. "Oh," Clementine said as she cringed a little. She knew that her adoptive father would probably act the same way if she ever found out that she was with a boy. Sarah perked up and said, "Oh yeah, Clem, Zeke knows Krista and Omid. In fact, Genevieve is their daughter." "Wait, what?" Clementine exclaimed. Her face warped into a shocked expression. It all makes sense now. No wonder why Genevieve looks so familiar. I didn't know that. Maybe we should tell the group. This might make them relax a little. I know it won't do anything to deter Carlos, but," Rebecca said. "I gotta go talk to him," Clementine said. She left the room and made her way downstairs. "Clementine!" Rebecca called out. She quickly caught up to the girl and Clementine turned around to see Rebecca walk up to her. "Sweetie, are you sure you're ready?" Rebecca asked as she slouched down to her daughter's eye level. "What? He might yell at you. It might be very upsetting." "I have to know. I have no idea what happened to Omid, Krista, Kenny, Ben, but Zeke might know," Clementine said. "Okay," Rebecca said. She seemed a bit worried, but Clementine knew she needed to find out what was happening, what was left of her old group. She walked over to the door outside, but she was stopped by Carlos. "Where are you going?" He turned around to see him approaching with a scowl on his face. He must have overheard her and Rebecca talking. "I'm going to talk to Zeke. He might know two people were a part of my group," Clementine said. "Absolutely not. My daughter isn't allowed around him, and that goes for W for you," Carlos said. "I don't have to listen to you. You're not my dad," Clementine snapped. It was the first time for her and anyone in the cabin. Even Carlos was surprised by her sudden outburst. "I haven't seen or heard from anyone from my first group in almost 2 years. I need to know what happened to them. No one is going to stop me." Carlos grumbled and said, "Well, we'll see what your father thinks of that." He turned around and walked away from her. "Whatever," Clementine muttered. She still didn't like Carlos. She turned to the door and went outside. She noticed Luke and some boy talking to each other. They seemed to be taking a break from doing chores. She walked over to the two who were keeping eyes on the boy, who must have been Zeke. He could tell that he was an archer thanks to the bow and arrows he had. She was surprised that the group didn't take that from him. She got closer and closer and could hear the boy and the man's conversation. "Well, even though my folks are gone, I guess I consider this group my family," Luke said as he chuckled. "Heck, I even think Clementine is my little sister at times." The boy scoffed. "Is she as annoying as a little sister?" he asked. "Nah, she's fun. She and Sarah like to prank Nick. I usually join in," Luke said. "Yeah, him," the boy muttered. Luke frowned as he turned his address to Zeke. "Listen, Luke paused. He has turned the head to Clementine's direction. He must have seen her out of the corner of his eye. And when he turned his head to address Zeke, "Clem." Zeke also turned his head. He was shocked to see her, but he kept eyeing on her with wide eyes. I need to talk to Zeke," Clementine said. I'll be, nearby if you need anything," Luke said as he got up and walked away from the two. Clementine walked over and sat down where Luke was sitting. "Well, it's finally nice to meet you," Zeke said. "Krista and Omid have been talking about you nonstop. I can see why. You seem very innocent and kind. Both are really rare these days." I just want to be nice like my first mom and dad, Clementine said. I guess I see you guess Krista and Omid were role models after everything that's happened, Zeke said. Please tell me tell me what happened to them. And Kenny and Ben, Clementine said. Zeke huffed and said, Okay. According to Krista and Omid, back in Savannah before Lee got you, Ben fell. He wasn't in good shape. Kenny stayed behind the alleyway to make sure he didn't suffer, and that same alley got filled with walkers. Clementine frowned at that. She knew that they were gone. No wonder Lee didn't mention to them. Krista and Omid looked really hard for you. I eventually stumbled onto the house that they were using to spend the night. They found out I was there, and after earning their trust, I went out to look for you myself. I'm a good tracker. I used to hunt deer for fun, so tracking is something I did very well in. I followed your tracks to the road. I figured someone found you and got you in the car. That's right, Luke and Tavia found me, Clementine said. I spent a while with them up at Howe's. We had to leave recently. Zeke nodded and said, What's the deal with Howe's anyway? Clementine huffed and said, Its leader is a tyrant, a psycho. He wants me as his heir. He wants me to be the future leader. Zeke had a questioning stare to the girl. You? No offense, but you look like you won't harm a fly, Zeke said. I know, but I don't look like much. I'm actually decent with knives and guns, Clementine said. Where did you learn to shoot? Zeke asked with a surprised look on his face. Lee taught me how to shoot a gun. It was after my friend Duck died, Clementine said. Luke's the one who taught me how to use a knife. Zeke nodded and said, Well, I might as well tell you the rest. I was with Krista and Omid for a while, but when Krista gave birth, she didn't make it. Why not? Clementine asked with a frown. Zeke cringed at that. He wasn't so sure how to explain it to an 11-year-old girl. She'd gotten an infection and was really sick, Zeke said. He wasn't sure how to explain childbirth complications to a girl. Okay, Clementine said. And Omid? I got separated from him recently. I think a couple of scavengers got the drop on him. I couldn't stay since I had Genevieve with me, Zeke said. I understand, Clementine said. So how about you? Are you okay? Zeke asked. Clementine smiled and she said, Yeah, I'm more than okay. I'm happy that I have a family again. That's good, Zeke said with a relieved smile. Yeah, well, thanks for telling me what happened, Clementine said. She got up. I wish you could come inside in the cabin with me. Same here. Oh well, in time they'll start to trust me, Zeke said. Yeah, good luck, Clementine said. Thanks, kid, Zeke said. Clementine nodded before she walked away and went back in the house. She wasn't looking forward to Carlos glaring at her for God knows how long, but she knew and was glad to have some closure on to what happened with her first group. Even if it was sad news that none of them made it. The day soon shifted into evening, and the girl group was at the dinner table again. Clementine noticed Carlos was quite angry. He had a scowl aimed at her. The girl did his best to ignore and continued to eat. The dinner table was filled with tension yet again. Carlos needs to clear his throat. I think we need to talk about Zeke and how he's affecting the girl's behavior. Carlos, Luke muttered. I'm not sorry for what I said, Clementine said. I needed to know what happened to my group. They looked after me. In fact, I'd be dead without them. Carlos looked at Alvin and said, I thought you were going to talk to her. I was, Alvin said as he crossed his arms over his chest, but I had to talk to Beck first. Found out you were being confrontational. I was not, Carlos said. I was simply just worried about her safety. That boy hasn't proven to be a threat yet. In fact, I'm going to take him down by the river tomorrow and help me get some fish. After that, he's coming inside, Pete said. No, that ain't happening, Carlos said. Yeah, I don't know, Uncle Pete, Nick said. That doesn't sound right. It ain't up to you two. The majority of the group wants him in here. He's a good kid. We need to give him a chance, Luke said. Can I come? Clementine asked. That's up to your mom and dad, even if you could wake up early enough, Pete said. Clementine looked to her parents and said, Can I please go with them? Rebecca chuckled and she said, Okay, baby. Just make sure you listen to Pete and be careful, Alvin said. I will, thanks, Clementine said. Uncle Pete, please rethink this. It's bad enough that you're dragging me into this, but the kid too? Seriously? Nick said. Why not? It'll give you the chance to make it up in particular. It will give a chance to make it up, Pete said with a stern voice. Hey, that was not my fault, Nick said. You know, Nick, I'm sick of hearing your excuses. When will you ever grow up and take responsibility for your actions? Pete said. Nick grumbled to himself before muttering whatever. He then got up to the table and then headed upstairs. Pete sighed as he said, That boy is going to have to move on. I miss Connie too, but he's going to have to step it up. We're all affected by Connie's death, but it's even harder on Nick. It's hard to lose a mother, Rebecca said. And yet we've all experienced that pain, Luke said. It's not simple. Seeing her like that really tears you up inside, Rebecca said. It's even worse when you can't do anything about it, Clementine said. All the group members turned to her and continued. I couldn't put my parents down. If I had tried to, then I would have been eaten alive. I was in the middle of a herd of walkers. Wait, a literal herd? Alvin said with a surprised look on his face. Impossible. They would have attacked you, Luke said. Sarah, go in the other room, Carlos said. I am okay, Sarah said as she was caught off guard when she obliged. She had finished her meal, so it didn't matter if she was forced to leave the room. She got up and took her bowl to the sink. Once she did so, she headed to the living room. Carlos had kept a stare on everyone to make sure they didn't say a word till Sarah had left. All right, we can continue, Carlos said. I was covered, remember? Rebecca said to Luke. Covered, wait, by that dark red blood? The walker's blood? Luke said. Clementine nodded and said, Lee covered me, and we went straight through. He was really covered in blood, but she could tell that her adoptive parents were cringing a bit. They probably didn't want to talk about the blood. So what? They really think you're one of them or something? Pete asked. I think so, Clementine said. I don't think I would want to try it, Luke said. It was kind of a desperate situation, Clementine said. We were in a city full of walkers, no ammo, no weapons, no easy way except going through the herd. Damn, that sounds rough, Alvin said. Why didn't you ever say anything about it? Rebecca asked. She seemed concerned about her adoptive daughter, having to go through a horrifying experience such as couldn't have been for a girl who was 9 at the time. It was never brought up till now, Clementine said with a shrug. Plus, hard to think of it as past times. Okay, honey, Rebecca said as she placed a comforting hand on the girls. It's okay. It doesn't hurt to talk as much about it anymore, Clementine said. Rebecca nodded before looked over to Genevieve. All right. Time for you to get in the bath and then bedtime, Rebecca said as she picked up Genevieve. I think she's getting attached to you, Beck, Alvin said. Rebecca smiled at the toddler who smiled back. I think so too, Alvin said. Genevieve said something, but it sounded like baby babble. Yeah? Rebecca said, as she carried the girl to the living room. She's cute, Clementine said with a smile on her face. Yeah, she is, Alvin said. Kinda gives you hopes in this world that you don't see babies more often anymore. Well, we better turn in. We have to best to wake up early, Clem, Pete said as he got up from the dinner table. Oh boy, Clementine said, as she got up from the table. She wasn't the only one. It seemed like everyone else was laying at the dinner table to either go to the living room or upstairs. In a couple of hours, the cabin became silent.